When it comes to beverage, to my mind, almost nothing beats a great cup of coffee.
Ah, coffee! There you go.
Fantastic.
And a little of
Oh,
that.
those will be unnecessary. I like my coffee black, no sugar.
Huh. Search yourself.
Thank you. Now, while I will always love my unadulterated cup of joe, there is another coffee preparation that I will never say no to.
Ah, venti triple shot, salted caramel, half skim, half 2%, mocha no whip, extra whipped cream latte.
Definitely not.
Well, your loss.
I don't think so. Now, I am talking about that sublime drink that was probably first handed out as a winter warmer in the 1940s by Joe Sheridan at Foynes Air Base, County Limerick, Ireland.
Ah, Mormon, Sheridan, 1940. What?
I'm talking about the Irish coffee.
Oh, Irish coffee, why didn't you say so? I'll whip you up one right quick.
Oh, excellent. One Irish coffee, my good man.
Oh, where is the Bailey?
Oh, no. There is no Baileys in an Irish coffee.
Really? Why is it called Irish cream then, huh?
Are you sure you know what you're doing?
Who's on which side of the bar here, pal? You just talk to your little camera there, funny man, and I'll whip your coffee up.
Now, while a classic Irish coffee is warm perfection in a glass, there are plenty of places like this one that have no idea what they're ruining. First of all, an Irish coffee is a whiskey drink. That's it, just Irish coffee. Now, while there is nothing wrong with a Bailey's in coffee, I have had one many a morning. If we're talking about the drink that is an Irish coffee, there's absolutely no Bailey's in it. At all. Period. And then the sugar. Just enough to lightly sweeten the drink. Typically brown sugar, but Demerara is a fine or perhaps even better choice. Whatever the case, never use white table sugar. And then the coffee. Just enough of a not too oily brew. We want it to complement the whiskey, but we need to leave enough room for the most important ingredient, the cream. That is the key to a proper Irish coffee. It has to be handmade. In fact, when at a bar, I'll always ask if they make their own whipped cream. And if the answer is no, I skip the Irish coffee and move on to something else. Really? Well, I mean, at least you didn't use instant coffee. Or drizzle it with creme de menthe. Okay. Some chain restaurants actually do that because, you know, I actually don't know why they do that.
It's green. Ireland's green.
What? In the cherry?
Everybody loves a cherry.
Okay. Let's get out of here and make a proper Irish coffee.
You're not even going to try it?
Oh, I have, and that was one time too many.
Search yourself!
Beverage with Blipey.
That's me.
The Irish coffee is a relatively simple beverage to make, but as we've just seen, many people screw it up spectacularly. Why? Well, I think it's a combination of not knowing that balance makes good drinks, the 1980s sweet cocktail craze, and probably a little 90s chain restaurant shenanigans. You see, with most good beverages, it's the balance and interplay between ingredients that make them wonderful. That's the same with the Irish coffee. It makes it the world's most popular hot alcoholic beverage. So, we're going to get the right ingredients together. Now, for glassware, lots of people like to use the footed mug, and that is perfectly acceptable. I personally like the look of the stemmed goblet, so we're going to go with that. Whichever glassware you're going to use, make sure it is 8 ounces for this recipe, because that will make the proportions of the ingredients correct. Now, we're going to start with the sugar. Now, for sugar, we're going to want to get a little sweetness, but we're also looking for something else, flavor. That's why we're not going to simply put white sugar in this. We're going to use brown sugar, and that's what a traditional Irish coffee calls for. That's because brown sugar contains molasses that processed white sugar does not. That brings a little bit of toffee and light caramel flavors that will punch through both the whiskey and the coffee. And we're going to use 2 teaspoons right there in the bottom. Now, the popularity and availability of raw sugars these days, like Demerara, which also contain molasses, makes the palette of sugars we can use in this drink a lot bigger. Though, if you are using a raw sugar, their crystals are fairly large and it takes a while for them to properly dissolve. So if you are going in that direction, I would suggest using a rich simple syrup. But we're using the light brown sugar in this. So we're going for whiskey now, and the whiskey that I am using is Bushmills Original for this one because I'm going with a coffee today that has a little bit of a chocolate undernote to it. And Bushmills is pretty mellow, but it does have a nice spicy punch to it that I think works well with the chocolate. And we are going to use 1.5 ounces of the Bushmills. Now, if you're going with a nuttier coffee, like I sometimes do, you might want to go with a Tullamore Dew. Now, the number of coffee and whiskey pairings you could use are practically endless. It really depends on your personal tastes. There are whiskeys with a nice citrusy note to them that you could use to have citrusy coffee be punched up even more, or you might use it to play against an earthier coffee and cut through it. There's whiskeys that are aged in sherry and bourbon casks that have nice big nutty and vanilla notes to them. They pair nicely with darker roast coffees, so you just have fun and try to find the combination that you like best. We're going to give that a little bit of a stir to get the brown sugar dissolved in the whiskey there. And that brings us to coffee. Now, that can be a big choice. And there's light roast or dark roast. How do you prepare it? Drip or pour over? Do you use African beans or Central American? It can be overwhelming. But as with most great beverages, it doesn't have to be complicated. Now, just use a coffee that you already enjoy. That being said, giving a little thought to our recipes can pay big dividends. Now, we might want to use a coffee that is light roasted. They have a fairly delicate body, though, so they might not stand up to our whiskeys. What they do have, though, is a nice, refreshing acidity and a natural coffee flavor that's unique to each type of bean. Though if you are going with the light roast coffee, I would suggest pairing it with a very mellow whiskey. What about the other end? The dark roast coffees. Well, dark roast coffees are certainly full-bodied and robust, big flavor, but while they are going to stand up to almost any whiskey, they do start to lose a little bit of the natural flavors of the coffee because of those big roasty and smoky notes that they have. So I tend not to do that. But Irish coffees that do use a dark roast coffee are good as big boozy whiskey forward drinks. So you might want to choose a huge whiskey for those. And that brings me to my personal choice for coffee in an Irish whiskey, a medium roast. Now, medium roast coffees tend to take on a little bit more body and a little bit of that more robust flavor profile from the caramelized sugar, but they don't lose a whole bunch of that natural coffee essence. So I like to go there. Now, for flavor profiles, I tend to use a coffee that has a nutty profile, and I personally stay away from coffees that have big citrus notes for an Irish coffee, but you use whatever you want. And we are going to use 4 ounces of the coffee here. That should take it right up to about a 1/2 inch or a little bit below 1/2 inch from the rim of our glassware. Give that another little stir. Make sure that sugar's dissolved in there. And that gives us enough room for our final ingredient. The most important ingredient in an Irish coffee, the cream. Coffee is there for mouthfeel and texture and is never sweetened. Ever. Never, ever sweetened. It's lightly whipped to give it a little extra body that makes it easier to float on top of the drink. Now the key here is lightly whipped. We really just want to whip it to the point of soft peaks or just before. Because the Irish coffee is a beautifully designed drink that is meant to be drunk through the cream. So the cream has to have the consistency that we can get a little bit of it with each sip of coffee. But if it's whipped too stiff into peaks like it is with desserts, it's too thick and it won't mix with the coffee. Now, proportion is important as well. We want to float just enough cream on top of the drink that we finish it all at the same time, the coffee and the cream together. So we'll float it by pouring a little bit of our cream over the back of a bar spoon, and that will help us get the right float, just like that. And it's so pretty. I mean, the white and the black dividing line there, and you just fill this up right to the top of your serving vessel. And there we have it. The classic Irish coffee. Joe Sheridan's sublime creation that is good for any occasion from breakfast to after dinner drinks to a nightcap. Oh, I almost forgot. Here, try this, Fred.
What is it?
That is a proper Irish coffee.
There's no cherry.
Certainly not.
That's fantastic. How do you make that? I gotta put this on the menu.
All right, first we'll get rid of this. Probably just throw it out. And that, put it in the cooler. I'll use it for something else.
All right.